there, I'm Chase Sr. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report, and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. On the docket, Week 16 preview, as the Niners travel to Indianapolis to play the Colts on Monday Night Football. San Francisco, 6-point favorites in this game. The line has remained firm all throughout the week. Kickoff set for 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Monday, 5:15 p.m. Pacific, and the over-under at 46.5. Of course, an indoor track at Lucas Oil Field in Indianapolis, so a chance for points to be scored, even though Grandpa Phillip Rivers going to get his second start with Indy. A programming reminder, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily coverage of the Niners, but also we go live for every single Niners game right here on the channel. Niners Colts watch party on the 49ers Report. Primetime football, Week 16. Can't wait to see all of you there. And a reminder, too, to hit that bell icon, turn on your notifications. Therefore, anytime we go live, you will get that notification. My initial thoughts on this matchup. I am fascinated to watch Grandpa Phillip Rivers in this game. We'll talk more about him coming up, but I think that him starting again for Indy as they're fighting for their playoff lives adds a fascinating element and storyline to this game, and I'm highly intrigued. If the Niners beat the Colts, they officially clinch a playoff spot. If they lose and the Lions lose against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Niners are still officially playoff bound. This defense, as compared to how they played against Tennessee, has to be better against this Colts team. The offense is going to need to carry because the defense is shorthanded. They're talent bereft. And this offense, for really the rest of the year, as long as the Niners are alive, is going to have to shoulder the load for this football team here in 2025. That's just the reality. And I don't want this to be a trap game for San Francisco, right? This is a huge game for the Niners. They might look at it and say, we're playing Phillip Rivers. We're going to be able to get after the quarterback here. The Colts have lost 4 games in a row, 5 of their last 6. They've been reeling. Easy dub. Not going to be easy. This is a good and quality Colts team. And with the Bears game looming next week, it's kind of in that precarious spot for San Francisco, but I would say that both games are huge, especially the Bears game and this Colts game. And I mentioned the Colts reeling of late. They got off to a terrific start, and they were led by Daniel Jones, really resurrecting his career under head coach Shane Steichen. They begin the year with a 33-8 win over the Dolphins. They beat the Broncos by 1 in Week 2, 29-28. They dust off the Titans 41-20. They did lose against the Rams in a back-and-forth game in Week 4, 27-20. But then they pummel the Raiders 40-6. Hold off the Cardinals at home 31-27. They beat the Chargers, another quality team, 38-24, and took down the Titans 38-14. The Colts were off to one of the best starts that they've had in recent franchise history. Then things started to fall apart for Indy. Daniel Jones came back down to earth. He threw 4 picks in a 27-20 loss against the Steelers on the road. They did beat the Falcons 31-25 in overtime overseas. And then 4 straight L's for Indianapolis. 23-20 loss on the road against the Chiefs when Kansas City was desperate at that point. 20-16 close loss against the Texans. They got blown out 36-19 against the Jags. That's when Daniel Jones popped his Achilles after he had that fracture in his leg. And then last week, they played pretty well. They hung tough on the road, hostile environment, but then lost on a last-second field goal, 18-16 to Seattle. And then Phillip Rivers after that field goal did get intercepted off a deflected pass. And let's spend more time talking about Phillip Rivers here. The numbers last week weren't great, and he's not going to wow you with his athleticism and running around. He's never been a great athlete. He's never had a bazooka for an arm. What's going to stand out about Phillip Rivers, how cerebral he is, how high of a football IQ he has, the intelligence that he has to point out defensive tendencies, pre-snap and post-snap as a play develops. There's a reason he's Hall of Fame eligible. There's a reason I think he'll go into Canton as a Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the league. Now, I think he's overweight and obviously doesn't have the arm strength that he did have when he was playing, and he's never been mobile, so now he's even slower. But if you're not careful, I think that Phillip Rivers, with that gunslinger mentality, with the high football IQ, how smart he is as a quarterback, can still pick you apart. And I mentioned earlier how intriguing and fascinating of a story this is. Prior to last week, he had not played since 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, 2025 is almost wrapping up. Since his retirement, a playoff loss to the Buffalo Bills when he was the starter for Indianapolis and actually put up solid numbers. He's been coaching high school football since then. His son, one of the top quarterback recruits in the country. He was Hall of Fame eligible this year. By playing, it now gets bumped back. What's also nutty, he's a grandfather. How many grandfathers are playing at the NFL level? And he's older currently than his current head coach in Shane Steichen and his offensive coordinator in Jim Bob Cooter. With that, I want to see where you're at here. Are you worried? Are you confident? Who you got in this football game? Type SF for the Niners, IND for Indianapolis. Get those predictions in. When I scout this Colts team, Rivers, smart as I mentioned, but cannot move. Jonathan Taylor, the running back, is a player who Phillip can lean on. Taylor got off to a terrific start. Since Daniel Jones has been hurt, and that was even when Jones was playing with that fractured leg, Taylor's numbers have slid a little bit. Hasn't been as productive. But really the first half of the year, you were talking about Jonathan Taylor as an MVP candidate and a potential player who could win Offensive Player of the Year. That's waned a bit because he hasn't had that force in the backfield with him. This Colts team at wide receiver and at tight end has elite receiving talent. The rookie tight end, Tyler Warren, one of my favorite players in the draft last year. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, a great 1-2 punch at the wide receiver spot. So this secondary and this defense as a whole will be tested. Shane Steichen. Some Colts fans might say he's on the hot seat. I think that's ridiculous. He hasn't had good quarterback play, and he's maximized a Daniel Jones, and now he's trying to make it work with Phillip Rivers. He's a great play caller, a great play designer, and you look back to what he did with Jalen Hurts in 2022 when Hurts was the MVP runner-up. That was by far the best year that Hurts has had in his career. It's because Shane Steichen was calling and designing the offense. This Colts team up front and collectively as a defense can also really get after the quarterback. They are 10th in the NFL with 34 sacks as a team. As for some Niners injury news here, these players all questionable. Of note, I'm recording this show on Thursday, this game on Monday night. Wide receiver Ricky Pearsall, linebacker Tatum Bethune, defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, linebacker Nick Martin, Sam Okuwana, the defensive end who can slide inside and play defensive tackle, Spencer Burford, the offensive lineman, and Yetur Gross-Matos at defensive end. All these players as of right now, questionable. On Saturday, the Niners will release another injury report that'll give us a clearer picture as to what we can expect for some of these players who might go and might not go. Some injury news for Indy here, and this was breaking news on this Thursday, December 18th, that the Colts are opening up the 21-day practice window for quarterback Anthony Richardson just to get him on the field. Coach Shane Steichen said he still has some vision limitations because he got hit in the face with a football and I believe broke his orbital bone. So not fully and 100% clear, but small progress for him to practice. Of course, this is going to be a storyline as well. The Niners going up against a great former Niner who's still getting the job done and still playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level, DeForest Buckner, who should have never played for another team outside of San Francisco. He was placed on injured reserve with a neck injury, did not play last week, has missed the last 4 games. He will practice on this Thursday, and the arrow is pointing up for him to play in this game against his former team. Causes so much disruption from that defensive tackle spot, and the Niners have never been able to replace him. Coming up next here on the show, we're only getting started with our preview. My keys to the game, top matchups to watch, what the Niners must do to beat the Indianapolis Colts. That's all coming up just around the corner. Don't you dare go anywhere. But in the meantime, let's get to our sponsor. Today's San Francisco 49ers report is sponsored by our friends at PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the game. And right now, when you play your first $5 lineup, you get $50 in lineups back if you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Join the millions of users and sign up today. It's a holiday season, the best time of year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right. That place is Prize Picks. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out of those winnings before the game even finishes. Is your fantasy season already over? Your team might be cooked, but with Prize Picks, you don't have to wait until next year's draft. Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week. No draft required. 3-pick power play for Monday night. Christian McCaffrey more on the half rushing or receiving touchdown. George Kittle, he's been so hot of late, more than 61.5 receiving yards. And then Phillip Rivers more than 159.5 passing yards. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, to the back half of our preview here. Welcome into the San Francisco 49ers Report. My name is Chase Sr. Coming up on the show, I'm going to give you my keys to the game for this Niners-Colts matchup on Monday night, what the Niners must do to win, some of the top matchups to watch, and my prediction. And let's begin by setting the table, setting the foundation, by taking a look at how this Colts team has fared on both sides of the football here in 2025. On offense, look at these numbers despite Daniel Jones having that broken bone in his leg and then tearing his Achilles. With this team having lost 4 games in a row and 5 of their last 6, they've still been a top 10 overall offense, and they're still fighting for their playoff lives on the outside looking in of the AFC wildcard hunt. Number 6 in points per game with 28. Number 8 in yards per game. 7th in yards per play. 9th on third down. 6th in the red zone. On defense, Gus Bradley used to be their DC. Now it's Lou Anarumo, as Gus Bradley is the assistant head coach of the defense. And on defense for Indy, they fared pretty well this year in a couple of categories, especially getting after the quarterback. And we'll touch more on that coming up here in just a moment. They are 12th in points per game, 22nd in yards per game, 14th in yards per play, 24th on third downs, but number 9 inside the red zone. As for the Niners offense, with what they've been able to do over the last few weeks, look at where they've risen to in some of these offensive categories. The Niners now 11th in the NFL in points per game, 10th in yards per game, 16th in yards per play. They've scored more of late, but of course, the explosives have gone down. Number 2 in the NFL on third down conversion rate and 9th inside the red area. On defense, it's crazy how Robert Saleh's defense is 11th in the NFL in points per game, 18th in yards per game, 22nd in yards per play, 15th in third down conversion percentage, and 13th inside the red zone. With that, we segue to my keys to the game and top matchups to watch. This is a big storyline going into this game. Could the Niners really lose to 44-year-old Phillip Rivers? It sounds crazy, but if the Niners mess around and don't play well, they could get upset in this game as 6-point favorites. And here's how. Look, the Niners gave up 6.7 yards per carry to the Tennessee Titans last week. If the Niners' run defense fares like they did against Tennessee, against Indy, to Jonathan Taylor, could be a long night for this Niners team. And it allows Indianapolis to control the clock, eat up clock, and keep that red-hot Niners offense on the sideline. This defense has to be sharp. And what I saw against Tennessee, the Niners made things too easy for one of the worst offensive units in the NFL. They gave up explosive plays. They had some coverage miscommunications and coverage lapses and breakdowns. If the defense is not sharp, Phillip Rivers is smart enough pre-snap and post-snap to burn you. So San Francisco has to be on their P's and Q's, and they have to play a tight-lipped ball game here where they don't make a bunch of dumb mistakes. And like Tennessee, where Cam Ward threw them the football, but they couldn't convert, if Phillip Rivers does that, you have to be able to capitalize, especially on the road against a quality opponent. Number 2, speaking of, part of what we said with point number 1, this Niners run defense must come to play. And of late, they've been one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. Kyle Shanahan was asked about that on Thursday and said, yeah, it's not where we want it to be, and it hasn't been good enough, and it's kind of been a problem here for a little while. The Titans offense against the Niners averaged 6.2 yards per play for the ball game. The Niners are lucky that their offense scored 5 times on their first 5 drives. Otherwise, they could have lost to Tennessee. That game got a little bit hairy at the end. Here's the big one here. The Tennessee Titans averaging nearly 7 yards per carry. Niners did not generate a turnover after they had forced 7 in the previous 3 games. And look, the Niners have won 4 games in a row because they're playing pretty good football, but on defense, they can't show the concerning signs that we saw displayed against Tennessee, against Indy here. Jonathan Taylor having a terrific year. He's a top 3 back in football, right up there with Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, all-purpose production, of course, playing at a top 5 level as well. Jonathan Taylor this year, more than 1,400 rushing yards, 5.3 yards per carry. And look at that number. 16 touchdowns on the ground with 3 games left. Great vision, great physicality, home run threat. Niners have to bring their A game with that rush defense. Number 3, this efficient Niners offense must carry. And look, going into the year, I had said time and time again ad nauseum, this defense is going to be young. This defense has a new defensive coordinator. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to live with some of the blemishes and bruises. By the end of the year, the defense might be in a good spot. But this offense, experienced, highly paid, a lot of marquee players, is going to have to carry this football team. Well, when you're without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, you're going to struggle from time to time, especially if you don't generate turnovers, which is why this offense has to continue to click. And this is the formula for the Niners to make a deep playoff run. For their offense to hover around 30 points per game, I said this a month ago after that Rams game, and for the defense to just be good enough. Give up all the yards that you want. Force the opposition into field goals. Don't let them score touchdowns. And this efficient offense has to be led by the efficient Brock Purdy that we saw on Sunday against Tennessee. 23 of 30, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a quarterback rating of 140.3. The biggest thing with how Purdy played against Tennessee, you might say, Chase, the Titans stink, and they do stink. But eye test-wise, Purdy passed it because he looked the healthiest that he's looked all year, and he was so dynamic with his feet and his legs. I want to see that continue, especially behind this shaky offensive line, which brings me to this. That's what you call a great transition and segue in this business, ladies and gentlemen. The Colts can really, really get after the quarterback. Their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the sport, and they have had top 10 sack production coming from everywhere on this defense. Laiatu Latu is leading the team with 6.5 sacks. DeForest Buckner is coming off of IR, still has 4 sacks. Kwity Paye has 4 sacks. Neville Gallimore has 3.5. Tyquan Lewis has 3. And then you look down this list, you see sacks coming from defensive ends, defensive tackles, safeties, linebackers, corners. I mean, Kenny Moore has a sack and a half. Mekhi Blackman has a sack. Cam Bynum, the safety, getting in on the party. They are getting sack production from all across that defense. You can't sleep on this defense, and I actually like how this game is stacking up for the Niners because this is going to be a really good litmus test for this team in trying to get ready for the playoffs, ready for the Bears next week, considering the Colts' strengths of running the football just like Chicago. But also, the Niners have not played a winning team, and the Colts are still a winning team since that loss to the Los Angeles Rams. Key to the game number 5, do not look ahead to the Chicago Bears. This cannot be a trap game for San Francisco. This is a monster matchup for the Niners here this week, next week, and also the week after that. You have to take advantage of the opportunity here. And with how closely contested everything is inside the NFC, there's not a lot of wiggle room to drop a couple of games here, especially if the Niners want to control their own fate and still having an opportunity to maybe get the number 1 seed or win the NFC West. I'm recording this before the Seahawks-Rams game on Thursday night. And so you look ahead to that big Bears game, it's one that human nature can come into play where it's easy to look ahead to this. Sunday Night Football against Chicago. Chicago going into Week 16, the number 2 seed. The Niners, 2.5-point favorites, over under 51. Chicago, one of the cooler stories across the NFL this year. This Colts team cannot be taken lightly. They are legitimate despite losing 4 games in a row. So predict the score. Niners on the road against the Colts. Monday Night Football. Robert Saleh against Grandpa P. I'm going with the Niners to win this one. I don't think they get to 30, but I think the offense gets to 25. The defense is just good enough. They intercept Phillip Rivers for a late pick to put this game on ice, and the Niners win their 5th game in a row.